Hello and welcome to the Tech in the Hood podcast. I'm your host, Ahmed Flex Omar. Tech in the Hood is a storytelling podcast that explores the past, present, and future of Chicago's cultural identity through conversations about community and technology. Each week, I reconnect with the friends and mentors who have shared this journey and spotlight new voices and innovators building the future of the Tech in the Hood. Welcome back to Tech in the Hood, the show that brings you all things art, business, culture, and of course, technology. With me today in the studio is my dear friend, Joe Brocato. Joe, welcome to the studio.
It's good to be here, Flex. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I always like to start off the podcast to introduce the audience and how me and the guests know each other. And I think our introduction came via, a friend of ours, Emil Eldada.
Yeah, Emil, sure, yeah.
And
how many years ago was that? That was a while ago.
Yeah, I think maybe over a decade now.
At least over a decade.
Yeah, it's been a while. And so true story, and I haven't shared this with you, so I guess I'll share it on the podcast. I was nervous when I first met you because Emil was like, "Oh yeah, this guy's introduced to Joe, attorney friend of mine, blah blah blah." And then like, yeah, he reps the Blackhawks and so on. And I was like, "Ooh, yeah."
Well, I was nervous meeting you too. I don't know why. No, I'm just kidding.
So I was like, all right, let's see. But man, the minute I walked into your office, he was just so gracious and generous, and we didn't even talk business. Just talk relationship and focused more on what we have in common. Yep. We talked about entertainment. He talked about you being a musician. All of that, and I was really endearing. And then I was like, okay. And then you started talking about being a life coach, right, as well, and your book. At the time,
yeah.
And so my question at that time was like, did you do a book signing? And he said no. And so
So you will go down in history as the first person to give me the opportunity to do a book signing for my book at that time, which was Happy is Cool, How to Ignite the True Happiness in You. So I was honored to be asked, and I literally remember that like it was yesterday. I remember the room we were in, remember doing a little talk, and then people, getting books, and I'm signing books, and it was just a really cool experience, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, shout out to Tech Nexus.
That's right.
Yeah, at the time they were hosting. Is that I do remember you walking over with the boxes of
exactly.
books from your office.
With the hope and fantasy that I'd sell them all, people would actually want them, right?
I think we sold them all.
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think we did, yeah. So thanks to you and the great people that were there, of course.
No, it's my pleasure, So, I mean, obviously, we've known each other, for, a long time, but haven't really done business together even just only recently, right? So timing is, everything. And speaking of timing, you just came out with your new book.
I did. Yeah. We launched that May 1st of this year, 2023, and had a really big world in-store launch at Barnes & Noble in Oak Brook, and you were there. I was honored to have you and a bunch of we had over 100 people.
Yeah.
Sold out of all the books, so it was a great honor for me to be supported by Barnes & Noble, and we've got another book signing coming up at Barber's Bookstore. So it's been a really interesting journey so far, and it really all started May 1 with the official launch, and then May 4th with the in-store world launch at Barnes. So so we're just trying to get the message out there at this point.
That's awesome. So 21 rules. Why 21?
Why not?
It's one of my favorite numbers, by the way.
It is, and happens to be one half of the number on your hat right now.
Look at that.
There's got to be a relationship with that, right?
Yeah.
No, I literally just started writing down some intuitive, pragmatic things that I have always used. since starting practicing law, and even before that, I've been practicing law now for little over 31 years. And I started thinking about things that I have noticed in myself in terms of how I go out and when I meet people for the very first time and make that great first impression, to developing a long-term emotional connection, which is really important when you're trying to accomplish a goal in a relationship. And I just came up with 21 rules. I think initially it may have been maybe 20, and I said, you know what, 21's a nice round number, so let me just bump it up one. And so I ended up with 21, and I go to Vegas a fair amount, and what better number than 21 for a guy that goes to Vegas a lot, right?
Blackjack.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So take us a little bit, through the book. What would you say is the top three, rules if people, don't get a chance to read the entire book right away?
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Well, I think the central message of the book that really is the umbrella for everything is applying critical thinking and mindfulness to the interpersonal dynamic.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is we need to really change the way we think about how we approach a relationship.
Right.
A lot of times we just leave a lot of goal pursuit in a relationship to fortuity. And I've never thought that fortuity was a great business model. So when you apply critical thinking, which is what these 21 rules really is intended to help you do, you're really coming at this from a different perspective. You're not leaving anything really to fortuity. You're taking control of the environment, and you're really coming in it with carefully assessing information and looking objectively at something and really being mindful and acutely aware of that interpersonal dynamic. And the whole idea really is to develop what I call a unique relationship with someone. That's a relationship that I define as difficult, if not impossible, to replace. From the moment you meet someone, studies have shown that we tend to make snap judgments about people in the first 2 seconds we meet them. And we tend not to change those in early judgments, even after we have more information. So that first 2 seconds is really, really important. So the first rule in the book, you asked for 3 rules. First rule in the book is about eye contact. And there's a lot of science out there about how we can convey emotion through our eye contact.
Yeah.
So given the setting that you're in, understanding the efficacy, and in the book, I really researched a lot of scientific studies, reports, and other expert commentary, both psychologically, sociologically, and business studies around these things. And with respect to eye contact, there's a lot of science about how you can really use your eyes to convey your emotion, depending on the setting that you're in. A lot of times we don't even think about that.
Yeah.
It's very simple, but what's the first thing you do when you meet someone? You tend to look into their eyes.
Right.
So you have to understand the science behind that and the efficacy of using that properly. A couple other rules that I really think about all the time is...
Actually, before we jump to that real
Sure.
quick, during the pandemic, right, people were wearing masks.
Yep.
So you couldn't, see people,
True.
So eye contact was even, more important. And
Exactly.
a friend of mine who's a restaurateur, Ryan Marks, would tell his staff, smile through your eyes.
There you go.
So I thought that was really, powerful.
Because it is powerful, because the eyes do, we've all heard the phrase, eyes are the window to the soul or what have you. Turns out to be true.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people who have looked at this from a scientific perspective and really figured that out. So if you're using that rule or any other rules in the book, it's like a golf swing. You have to learn some of these basic things. But once you get the flow down, and by the way, I am no expert at golf, just for the record, but I do know there's a process involved.
Sure.
And I'm practicing all the time.
There's
At least I try to.
involved.
There's some physics involved, exactly. But it's like signing your name. Once you have that muscle memory, it's not that hard, but you have to practice. And actually, at the end of the book, there are a number of exercises where people can actually start practicing these things right away. And I like books where you can learn something practically, but then start putting them into action. And that's what I wanted to do with these exercises.
That's incredible. So does it matter, the age, or, is there a particular, group or personas, that you're targeting?
Not really. I think that no matter what age you're at, where you're at in your career, whether you're still in school, that these things are all about taking, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, and mapping out the most strategic pathway to achieving your goal. When I was starting in my legal profession, I started trying to develop business. And as you know, developing business is not that easy. People have to trust you. You have to be competent, obviously. You have to really convey the fact that you care sincerely about the other person and their business. And I ended up hitting wall after wall, a lot of challenges and obstacles. You fall off the horse, you get back on the horse. And I found there to be a lot of inefficiency for me achieving my goal of really developing a great book of business, great clientele. And what I want to do is really provide to people a more efficient way to go about achieving the goal. So, for example, a second rule that I'll comment on is rule number 2, actually, about planning to achieve goals in reverse, which is interesting. It's a scientific concept called future retrospection, which basically says you don't just start with a nebulous goal in mind. Oh, I want to go and develop a bunch of business. I want to start it today and plod along, and like I said, let fortuity take over. It's not a great approach. Future retrospection basically says you start with the end vision. Where do you want to be at a certain point in your career? Yeah. It could be a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever the case might be. And then you are as detailed as possible about that. And then you work methodically backwards. It could be a week before you achieve your goal. It could be a year, 2 years, to the present day with an immediate action item. And what science shows is that when you do that, you tend to avoid going down the wrong rabbit holes. You're much more efficient, and you're probably going to increase the likelihood of achieving that goal. So that's something that we don't think about, but science actually gives us this tool to work with.
That's incredible. So did you do the science part, the research on your own, or did you?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. I enjoy it. I didn't want it to be just me saying, hey, I'm Joe Brocato, and here are things that I think you should do. I really wanted it to be based on something much more than me. And frankly, what better than studies that are specifically focused on certain things? So when I came up with this list, if you will, of these 21 rules, I hoped and prayed that there was some good science behind them, and turns out there was.
No, that's awesome. And so LinkedIn, and you know me, I always post on LinkedIn. So recently they reached out and like, can you contribute to an article that we're working on? And so my contribution, in terms of the quote, was for long-term, goals and advice to startup founders is break down your long-term goals into smaller, actionable milestones. And then I also gave the example of BizTone, who's the co-founder for Twitter. And he said timing, perseverance, and 10 years of trying will eventually make it look like an overnight success.
Yep.
And basically I would say this approach allows you to not only maintain focus on your overarching vision, but also to measure your advancement along the way, So for me, I gamify it.
I like that approach, and that really gets to that strategic approach. That it makes it fun. You make it fun.
So there you go.
And you're able to keep track a little bit more. You're more organized. You're more efficient. Yep. We both, as you know, went to Loyola University. We're both very proud of that.
Shout out to the Ramblers.
Shout out to the Ramblers. I was an econ major, and so when I think about things, I tend to, thanks to Loyola, think about things from an efficiency perspective.
That's right.
So what is the most efficient pathway to something? And the things that you've quoted there that you're recommending go toward the concept of efficiency. And if people really want to maximize the likelihood of achieving whatever goal they have, it could be in their personal life, it could be in a business context, why not be more strategic?
Right.
And I think those quotes, in terms of keeping people on track, setting that goal and having milestones, and the rules in my book are really intended to help people do that.
No, absolutely. You have a morning routine that keeps you focused?
I actually do. I meditate for 5 minutes. I know I should meditate longer, but a lot of things going on. And then I listen to about 10 minutes as I'm kind of getting ready for the morning, positive affirmations.
Sure.
And, I really find that's a great way to start my morning.
Yeah.
And then I tend to, if I've got time, and I try to fit it in every morning, read. I'm in the middle of several books, so I like reading, and I like picking up, even if I read a chapter of something. I really enjoy just kind of internalizing that, and then setting goals for the day. I try to set at least 3 goals for the day, and I keep a little journal. And I write down 3 goals for the day, and then 3 things that I'm grateful for, really. It really helps me to settle in, keep things real, if you will, and hopefully get the day off to a good start.
No, absolutely. I have a similar morning routine. I don't get it right. There are certain times, I derail, especially if it's building a new startup or even starting a podcast, and then I go back to it in my morning routine, and it helps me, recenter. Gratitude and affirmations is, really important. Obviously, when it's nice outside, just go out there and get some sunlight. Just start the day, in that way, and not even look at social media, emails, what's happening, so that helps a lot.
It really does.
And recently I was at a lecture at the Chicago Theater with Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's got a podcast called the Huberman Lab, and he talks a lot about getting sunlight early in the day. And so I'm gonna have to see about the winter in Chicago.
Get yourself,
have to find a fake light.
Get yourself a happy light.
Happy light.
It's a happy light. You get it online.
Exactly.
Different sizes depending on how much sunlight you want in the middle of winter in Chicago.
Exactly. So winters are always tough, but working, I went to Loyola for accounting, actually. So initially computer science major, and then switched into accounting. But tax season is always in the winter, right? So it's busy season. So sort of that became my routine, too, over the years. That's when I get my best work, done. I just have, this intense focus because of my, training, and that's basically like muscle memory,
Exactly.
So a lot of people go, oh, the winter's coming, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be so efficient.
Right.
Exactly. I'm the opposite, so
absolutely.
That being said, I want to shift a little bit and talk about the American dream. I mean, I'm an immigrant, refugee, survived genocide in Somaliland, and was very fortunate to live in Abu Dhabi in the UAE for quite some time, and then to come here, seek refuge, and build a life here. Also be able to work and look after my family and so on, right? So when I came here, the American dream for me was just I just want to pursue my dreams, my passions, and just be able to take care of my family. I wanted to ask you, like, what is the American dream to you? Does it still exist? And also, what advice do you have for young people?
Well, that's a great question. There's actually a USA Today article recently about whether the American dream is still attainable for Gen Zers and millennials. And I want to say it was maybe 65% of one of those groups believe that it was not. I personally believe that as long as this great country of ours is alive and well, so is the American dream. And I think that everybody needs to define that themselves. I really believe it goes back to our Declaration of Independence with the pursuit of happiness concept. So I do believe it's a concept first and foremost. Our framers didn't define what that happiness was necessarily. I think they left it up to us to define it. And I would encapsulate that with the concept of prospering. We have the greatest country in the world, I believe. with all the elements and the foundation to prosper, depending on how you define the American dream. If you go back to the Depression, for example, I'm sure that a lot of those folks, they were just, their American dream was have food on the table. And maybe their kids, they just wanted to have a steady job so they could put them through some sort of schooling. So I think that it is tougher for the younger generations now, but I think every generation has had it fairly tough. I look at my father, he was also an immigrant, came to this country when he was 13 years old from Sicily. And they didn't have any money, and they were basically laborers. My grandfather, I should say, was a cement finisher. So on his hands and knees, finishing driveways and sidewalks his entire professional life. My father, when he was getting started, worked 5 jobs, one of which was really digging graves in a graveyard. And so I kind of saw that coming up and how hard he worked, and they wanted a good paycheck. They were willing to work for it. So I witnessed for the first time growing up the concept of work ethic, personal responsibility, and they wanted to have a safe family. They wanted a safe environment. Hopefully, send me, I was the only child, to school, and they did that, and they had a sacrifice. So I think that every generation has it difficult. But I am very, very optimistic, notwithstanding the article that was out in USA Today recently, and some of the perceptions that younger people have. I think it's about, they need to keep in mind that anything really is possible, especially in this country. And I believe that with the technology that they have that other generations did not have, with the all the advances in healthcare, with the opportunities to really have a work-life balance. Work-life balance, working from home, remote working, hybrid working, that wasn't even a possibility just a few years ago.
Yeah.
We were in a very command and control management style of running businesses, we being in this country for the most part. The pandemic shifted a lot of it to trust and verify.
Yeah.
Hire the right people, trust them to do their job, verify that they're doing their jobs. But because of that phenomenon, younger people really, they can work from home. They can actually pursue their well-being and their happiness probably a lot more so than a lot of other generations. So I think they need to certainly remember that. I know it's difficult. There's a lot of negativity in the world. It seems like every time we turn on the news, there's something, our phones are beeping all the time with negativity right around the world. It's very, very difficult. I get it. I understand it. However, because of the things I've said, technology, healthcare, the ability to pursue your what's going to make you happy. A lot of people didn't have that opportunity back then. They had to go into certain professions because they had to make money because they just needed to eat. So the bottom line is, I think what younger folks in particular need to remember, but everybody needs to remember, I think, is that if you're looking at job success, and let's say you do define the American dream through a financial reward, so you want to have a nice home, you want to have a nice car to drive, a safe car, you want to be able to go on a vacation, whatever the case might be, you have to make money. We're in a capitalistic society, and everybody has the opportunity to make money. There have been studies that have shown that 85% of our success on the job is based on our skills with people.
Relationships. Yeah.
Only 15% is based on our technical skills and our knowledge. Basically things we go to school for, all right? So, and with the advent of AI, maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that 15% is going to shrink because machine learning is going to take over. I think a lot of that technical skill, acumen that we have. And so that 85% of relationship skills as a measure and a pathway to success is going to be only more important. So I think the significance of personal relationship skills, which is what my book is a big, the big messaging around, I think it's become increasingly more significant. I think younger folks in particular really need to harness what is within their control. That is within their control. How they go about developing relationships, how they move up in a company. If you want to start a company, how are you going to get investors? How are you going to get co-founders? How are you going to get people to believe in your vision? These are all relationship skills.
No, absolutely. And thank you for that. So I'll give you kind of a little bit of a story in terms of my experience. And God bless Loyola, because it was perfect university for me. It's a city school. You know, our business campus is located on downtown in the Gold Coast, and I was working for the Hilton DoubleTree at the time, and it was just a couple of blocks down the street, you know, from school. So I was able to work full time, go to school full time, take care of my, you know, family, and then also eat and play in the same, you know, area. So that was super and build, you know, relationships. I worked at multiple jobs at the hotel, but the one that I enjoyed the most was being a host. You know, although they would mess up on my paycheck and put hostess.
Maybe they were just razzing you, see how much you can take.
Yeah, you know? as long as I, you know, got my paycheck, you know, right. I didn't care what they put on there. So, but it was really cool because I got to, you know, greet people, and also I discovered very quickly that I had power. Because I had the power of where to seat people. And because I had the power of where to seat people, you know, people wanted to build a relationship, you know, with me, because they wanted to have a strategic location where they sat in the, you know, patio. The servers would say, please, I want so-and-so client, you know, so very quickly you realize, okay, well, this is an interesting, you know, job. Yes. And then the manager, you know, starts putting, you know, some trust in you, and you know, says, hey, I gotta go and do some inventory or whatever. Can you just run the show for, you know, a few hours, right. You know? And so for me, that was just a great experience. But I built so many relationships, you know, through that one job. And then I was able also to, you know, go to school down the street. And I was speaking, you know, to a young man who was just starting his freshman year at Michigan, you know, State, and he was asking me about what advice I should give him. And I told him, actually build relationships with your teachers, because I was working full time, and I knew there was going to be times where I'd miss a homework and so on. So I wanted to have a relationship with my teachers and let them know right off the bat that, you know, I have certain, you know, challenges, but that does not mean I'm looking for a special, you know, anything special. I just wanted to let you know, in case, you know, something happened. And they appreciated that, because I went early in the semester in the office hours, and, you know, they became friends of mine, as opposed to like students going at the end of the semester and saying, oh yeah, it's finals, you know, can you help me? And the teacher would say, where were you all year?
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
Now you need me. So one of the things that I always educate young people about is to stay away from transactional relationships, and building relationships over time is super hard, but it's rewarding. And any business that I've, you know, started, being an entrepreneur now for, I don't know, over a decade, let's say, it's all been, you know, relationships, you know, that I've built, you know. So that is, and that basically ties back to what we were talking about regarding the American dream. There's, because I've had the perspective of living and growing up in multiple, you know, continents, the opportunities here are endless. And I understand sometimes with young people, it's really hard to trust the process if you have not experienced it, or if you're, you know, coming also, you know, from low income, you know, background, with kind of a lot of the young kids, you know, that I network with. It's hard to, like, you know, trust the process. But meeting someone like you and other folks that I introduced them to, then, you know, they start, you know, calming down and saying, hey, you know what, let me just trust the process. But mentorship is super important, you know. And so if you don't have someone in your family that has, again, experience, you know, that, you know, American dream in the way that you want to, it's really hard to, trust the process.
And I couldn't agree with you more on all of that. I think that younger folks need to have good examples. Our political leaders need to be better examples. Our business leaders need to be better examples. Parents need to be better examples in the home. And it's really all about a lot of the fundamentals. And I've been blessed that I had a great family growing up, and Italian family, or as my father would say, half Italian, half Sicilian, because he came from Sicily. So had to make that clarification. But, things like respect, and I'll cap that off for the third rule you asked me about. Respect is something I learned around the kitchen table. I tell a sweet story about my maternal grandmother. On Sunday, she used to cook the pasta, and the gravy. We called it gravy back then. I still call it gravy. And God forbid you didn't have your third or fourth helping. You were disrespecting grandma, And it was just this thing. It was a. I think we've lost in many ways the art of respect. When you were working at the hotel, you were seating people, you treated them with respect, or else you'd get fired, right? They treated you with respect because if they wanted to be seated in the right spot, the servers treated you with respect because they wanted to have the right patrons that they wanted. So it's a nice. Everybody's got a rational self-interest, and if you learn to respect, what does respect really mean? It is acknowledging that the other person is a human being, should be valued, whether you agree with that individual or not. And frankly, if you're able to show respect, what the book really talks about, the science shows, is that it builds gratitude. And it helps people feel accepted. They're going to be a little bit more open to welcoming you into their world, and that can help you achieve your goal just a little bit more efficiently.
No, absolutely. So I've mentioned startups a couple of times. I'm a big startup, guy. But in early in my journey, I didn't, consider working with attorneys or getting legal advice. But some lessons you learn it the hard way, right? And that's just part of the journey. So I wanted to ask you, sort of an advice to startup founders. At what point do they start engaging, with an attorney? I think something that you and I, talked about is NDAs. And initially, I was not big on NDAs because whenever I build any company, I look at it as a project first. I remove all emotions, from it, and then build an advisory board and just kind of like follow the scientific, method. I have a hypothesis, and then I validate it, through, testing it, right? And recently, unfortunately, I've been seeing, people that would copy, what I do, and and so on, and it's unfortunate, so they can't execute at my level because they don't have my connections, they don't have my secret sauce. But I'm starting to send NDAs, now, and I think it also establishes, that decorum of, respect as well, like respect my IP, respect, my company, assets. So I just wanted to, ask you that question about, startup founders and when to engage with attorneys. I know it's a tough question.
Well, you said we have 3 hours for this podcast. I can go on and on and on about answer. That. Of course, I've been doing this for a little bit more than 31 years. So, let's take a step back from the legality of it. And if I had to really think through or recommend something for people to start with, is if you're a founder, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make is not doing enough due diligence on any co-founders that they're working with. Certainly if you're by yourself, you're doing it on your own, you should be able to trust yourself. But a lot of times people get together and they get all excited. Hey, let's do this. Let's do that. Okay. And then when all the frills end and the work starts, people do have different perspectives on life. They have different perspectives on business. They have different perspectives on respect. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, in many cases, we have a lot of, I just call them partnership disputes, where in many cases they don't have the right paperwork to govern any disputes, so that it gets way out of whack and ends up costing them a lot of money, potentially in litigation dollars, to hire lawyers to fight. So I really recommend people really get to know, I call it who-diligence. Do your who-diligence. Find out who these people are. Get to know them. Develop rapport. It's another key rule in the book about making sure you really share, you're aligned in values. You have the same non-negotiables. You can avoid a lot of problems. If you look at the high rate of failure for startups, you don't need the wrong co-founder. Mm-hmm. That'll increase your chances of failure. But you mentioned NDAs. Yeah, there are. When should someone consult a lawyer? I always say as soon as possible. What lawyer wouldn't say that? And it's something I believe in. The problem is a lot of people can't afford lawyers. Right. That being said, there are certain not-for-profits that potentially can help lawyers for free.
Like law clinics, like Loyola has one, for example.
Exactly. For a number of years, I was part of Lawyers for the Creative Arts, and it provided pro bono legal service for musicians and other artists who couldn't afford lawyers. But again, develop relationships with lawyers. You don't have to hire them. Get them to befriend you, and vice versa if you happen to know them, or ask people, do you know a lawyer? Ask thoughts and get any recommendations you can, just to familiarize yourself. And frankly, like going back to personal responsibility, go buy a book on basic legal things, for ideas for people who aren't lawyers. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of resources out there just to educate you on the panoply of potential issues that you have. I'm a big believer that NDAs are important. That said, it's all about whether or not that person is of integrity, because anybody can breach any contract. So you can have a piece of paper. Again, it gets to who are you dealing with, and a lot of business is done without NDAs because people who trust each other don't need them necessarily.
All right.
But in addition to the concept of non-disclosure agreements, non-circumvention is also very important. If you're bringing someone into a deal, if you're bringing someone into a company, and you've got some relationships, you don't want them going around you. Mm-hmm. I actually just heard, it's quite fortuitous we're talking about, I just heard a story from a friend of mine who brought someone in on a deal, and the gentleman that tried going around her went right to her main contact at this third party. And of course, the third party is calling her saying, who is this guy? And she didn't have a piece of paper. And not that it would have necessarily stopped it, but it provides that disincentive. And like you said, it gets back to making sure you're starting with the foundation of respect. Right. Because if there was that mutual respect, maybe that wouldn't have happened to begin with.
No, absolutely. So let's bring us into, the AI topic, which is, hot right now. So you mentioned one way for people to get educated on this topic is, purchase a book, befriend an attorney. What about just asking ChatGPT?
Well, ChatGPT doesn't have a law degree, okay? I never recommend taking advice from anyone who doesn't have a law degree. Listen, there are a lot of resources out there. Nothing beats going to someone who's been trained in anything you're talking about.
Sure.
I'm not going to take my car to a lawyer who doesn't know how to fix cars, right? So it just depends. There's a lot of good information that we can access through artificial intelligence. I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for years. Now, because of ChatGPT in particular, it's become in vogue and everybody's talking about it. But it's been around for a long time. And I think that the human being is only capable of processing so much information. So machine learning is going to get us to obviously a place we haven't been before in terms of just being able to process data. I actually penned an article where hopefully going to get published very soon around the growing significance of personal relationships in the age of AI, because notwithstanding how great and cool AI might be and how tempting it might be just to type something into ChatGPT, nothing beats that personal touch. Nothing beats the relationship. Nothing beats the collaboration between two human beings. Human beings understand context. Human beings understand feelings that have to be measured in many cases. Right. Sometimes even in a professional context when you're giving advice to a client or a customer or whoever. So that's something that AI, I don't believe, will ever be able to do as well as human beings. Just take our corporate boardrooms. You know, boards of directors govern corporations. Until we are, as a human race, willing to forfeit governance of our corporations to machines, then we still have relevance. And I believe we have a significant relevance. So the bottom line is we're not doing that anytime soon. It's still the human being that signs on the dotted line and makes those decisions, pushes the go button. And I really think that's something that we need to keep in mind. It's a balance. And like any sort of technology, it could be overdone. It could be used for ill means. But let's remain optimistic. And let's use it for hopefully to make our lives a little bit better, more productive, and hopefully get us closer to prospering and achieve that American dream.
No, absolutely. You know, so I always look at technology as a net job creator. You know, so social media, you know, came about. You know, so many jobs were created, right, through social media companies or even consultants. I mean, even Salesforce. You know, how many jobs that Salesforce, just one company, right? You know, create, and so AI is moving at a really rapid rate right now. So I was curious to see how is it affecting your industry, the legal profession. Are you still going to hire was it paralegals? Is that
paralegal? Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm a big believer, as I said, generally in artificial intelligence. I think it's going to really help our world in many great ways. That said, it will disrupt just about every business, every profession. I think the service industries are particularly vulnerable because remember, it's about the technical skill piece and the knowledge that you go to school for, whether it's law school or medical school or whatever schooling you have, to have, let's call it just an esoteric form of knowledge. Well, nothing's esoteric to a machine. The machines will certainly be helpful in all of those professions. I don't think at all that AI is going to materially reduce the number of lawyers that are out there. But what I do believe is that lawyers who do not know how to use AI are going to be at a massive, massive disadvantage because clients are going to want more efficiency. And they're always going to want better and better results, obviously. So if machine learning can get you closer to that perfection that you're looking for in any situation, whether it's in a legal context or any other professional context, why wouldn't a professional want to access that? If you don't know the answer to something, you look for it in a book, Black's Law Dictionary. If you don't know a defined term in law, you look in Black's Law Dictionary. You access information. Machine learning is another form of accessing information, so why wouldn't you use it? I don't think people should rely on AI for legal advice. I don't think that lawyers should be relying on it to certainly do case law without verifying it independently through human means. So these are things that are very important, but it's an evolutionary process. We're just
AI
starting.
Hallucinates too. So there was a story of an attorney that got in trouble.
Oh yeah, that was quite embarrassing. Obviously, very poor judgment,
especially with his citations. And, so on. So the way I explain AI to people is you're the captain, the AI is the co-pilot.
There you go.
Right. So you're not gonna blame the AI because you're the captain, but AI has been great for even creative, writing.
Absolutely.
And efficiency is key. I mean, repetitive tasks that you can use AI for really helps increase, productivity. I've helped non-for-profits. I've built bots, for them through FlexTech, AI, and they've really loved that, because non-for-profits are under-resourced and they're busy. But
absolutely,
when you go on the website, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, why should I donate and what differentiates this non-for-profit? So in comes the bot, and it can just answer the questions very quickly. And the key thing also is it could also direct you to the right person at that, organization, so it saves so much time, and there's a higher, rate of conversion too on, donations and so on, because people, invest in programs, invest in, people, so if the bot, can help in certain way, why not? But it's also important to have the conversations right now about the limitations and the, ethics, because we've missed the boat on social media, and social media unfortunately affected, a lot of people that did not see it as a tool. I mean, when the pandemic, hit, and people just fight about, everything. I mean, and you go through the Facebook pictures. I mean, these people were on trips, together. Their neighbors, their friends. All of a sudden, it's like one, Facebook, post, and we just. It wasn't even intellectual, conversations. A lot of, copy pasting and then just arguing in the comments about nothing. And then somebody you've never met in your life, comes into that, conversation. So we didn't have these conversations early on about, limitations and ethics and so on, and moderation. Obviously Facebook, for example, started investing more in, moderating, the platform, fact checking and, all of that, so that's something that we need to have these conversations about for AI.
I agree with that. And unfortunately, you mentioned kind of the disagreements on Facebook and just other social media platforms. That is a microcosm of a broader incivility that we're witnessing in our world right now. And technology, unfortunately, helps people be more incivil. And so we have to be very careful. And in the workplace in particular, there's a vast amount of incivility right now. There was a Harvard Business Review article that reported the results of a study that was done that reported the extent of incivility in the workplace, which shocked me, actually. And incivility, we're talking about rudeness, disrespect, or other insensitive behavior. And 78% of respondents reported witnessing incivility in the workplace at least once a month. 70% reported witnessing incivility in the workplace 2 to 3 times a month. Now, when I read that, I was like, this is crazy. We shouldn't have that. So unfortunately, human beings sometimes are prone to incivility, and this article actually talked about how it's contagious, like the common cold. So we do have to be very careful and measure and use technology for good. And again, going back to really the thesis of the book at its heart is human connection. And when you use technology wrong, in a wrong way, you're fracturing that human connection with other people. Mm-hmm. You're not bringing people closer together. When you're incivil, you're not bringing people closer together. You're bringing people further apart. Human connection is one of the basic human needs. And by harnessing good relationship skills, I call them power skills. People used to call them soft skills. Yeah. I call them power skills. These are things that people really can access power to achieve their goals. When you're not being civil with people, there's a rule in here about when you disagree, find common ground. I think this would go a long way to end a lot of the incivility that we have right now in the workplace, in society generally, in the world. And when you do disagree with someone, one easy way to deflect that and maintain the relationship is to pivot and really focus on and harness common values, aligned values, governing values, non-negotiable things that you can both rally behind. We're not necessarily thinking about doing that in a discussion. And so that's a way you can preserve things. People can do that on Facebook. They can do it on any social media platform. And any of the rules that are in this book and the science that shows the efficacy of these rules transcends medium. It could be an in-person situation, it could be a video conference, it could be on social media, anything, email, text, etc. There's no excuse for not being civil with people. And I think if people follow these rules, we have rules for everything. We have rules of the road. We have rules in our sports. We have rules when we sit down at a table to eat. Everybody's got to get served first before everybody digs in. We don't necessarily have rules around how we go about efficiently dealing with people and achieving our goals very efficiently. And I think these 21 rules could put us on the pathway to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's a great place to end the podcast.
Perfect.
So appreciate you stopping by, the studio, today and giving us, your time. Before we leave, where can people find you?
Well, I'll be here for a few more minutes, so if you're in the area. You can visit my website for the book. It's called hititoffthebook.com, hititoffthebook.com. Love your viewers and your listeners to follow me on social media, Joe Brocato Official. It's Joe Brocato Official. And all my information's online, so I'd love for people to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe.
Well, thank you very much, Flex. Great to see you, and really an honor to be here.
For sure.